What can Florida Gators fans expect from Emeka Ugorji in 2026?
You are Locked On Gators, your daily podcast on the Florida Gators. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hello and welcome back to another episode of Locked On Gators, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Thanks for making Locked On Gators your first listen of the day. Every day we are available daily and free, whether it's in the podcast and on YouTube. I am Brandon Olsen, and the Florida Gators brought in offensive tackle Emeka Ugorji from Stanford this past cycle. The reporting when he was getting targeted by Florida was, well, the reporting was fine, right? Was that, hey, he's getting targeted in the transfer portal. They really like him, and he's going to play offensive tackle for Florida. So again, early on, we knew, hey, offensive tackle, and that was important because he's 6'4", 311 pounds, which is more typical of guard size. But like we've had this conversation before many times at this point, teams are now looking more at, do you have the foot quickness to and just the reactive athleticism to hang out at offensive tackle and pass protection. That matters more than the whole, like, oh, his height, his arm length, which, by the way, you could be 6'4" and have long enough arms to hang and bang if that's your, if you're like a length person. But teams are looking for the athleticism to play tackle now more than just, oh, hey, is he 6'5", 6'6" with 34-inch arms, or whatever the hell they're looking for nowadays. Like, this is different now. It's looking for that reactive foot quickness because, well, like we've had this conversation 1,000 times. You look at these edge rushers nowadays, and they are just animals. They are so insanely athletic. It's ridiculous to see. They're flying off the edge with insane first steps, and then the moment you overset a little bit, they're spinning inside and destroying your quarterback. That's been what it is. Like that's how much hell you have to deal with as an offensive tackle. And that is why we can talk about saying, hey, like, you got to have the reactive foot quickness out there. You got to have the reactive athleticism to hang and bang out there. And Emeka Ugorji, and again, like, it's not the only thing that you need, but that is an important part that teams are now looking for, where they're saying, hey, if you don't have the reactive athleticism to play pass pro as an offensive tackle, you need to have the power to play guard. And so that's why we can have that conversation with multiple people, right? We've had the conversation about Austin Barber was, hey, I've spoken to NFL scouts that were like, we don't think he's got the footwork to play tackle, but we also don't think he's got the power to play guard. So we're interested to see what he does there. Emeka Ugorji played a lot at Stanford, started 8 games, played in 10, and played both right guard and right tackle, but significantly more at right guard. And when you look at the numbers, right, like you look at the PFF numbers, and they ain't pretty, okay? They're not pretty. There are 7 sacks allowed and 24 pressures allowed. Again, that's in 8 games. So that's 3 pressures allowed per game, which for Florida, that have been worst on the team by a significant margin. Okay, Florida, Caden Jones had 27 pressures, which was the most allowed in 2025. And he played all 12 games. So again, Emeka Ugorji allowed 24 pressures, playing in 8, or starting 8, playing 10. Played tackle and guard. Honestly, when you watch the film, and we wrote the scouting report about him, right? Like, I like him. I do. I think he's got the athleticism to work. I think he's got the power to work. I think he's got the tools. I see why we were told so consistently, hey, this coaching staff is actually really high on him. Because I think when you go and you watch the film, and that's not to be like we'll watch the film and then have an opinion kind of guy. I am that kind of guy, but that's not what I'm doing in this moment. But when you watch the film, I think you see the vision, right? I think you could see it. And I will also say that if you want to be a numbers person, North Carolina, he allowed 7 pressures. San Jose State, he allowed 6, right? And we did talk about when I wrote the Emeka Ugorji scouting report for Swamp Signal, that's Substack.com. We did talk about the context of the pressures allowed for Emeka because that was a relevant thing, right? It is relevant. I think context really matters. And we spoke about it, and it was, during his 7 sacks allowed on the year, 4 of them came in that North Carolina game where he allowed 7 pressures total. I wrote it down. I said, the sacks, I think he expected running back help because he only attempted to block one side of the rusher before it was too late, and then he tried to correct. Not sure who was at fault for the miscommunication, but I don't like putting yourself in that situation regardless. On the second sack, he was definitely losing the rep, but the quarterback stepped up into the sack. And not to excuse it, just saying that was a combined effort there because sacks are a quarterback stat. The third sack, he just got beat quickly by the edge rusher, and then the QB slid to avoid the actual hit. And on the fourth sack, he just completely whiffed on the block and gave up an immediate sack. That's it. That's whatever. It's not to excuse it. It's just the context of the sacks allowed, I do think matters. But I also think that when you watch the film, it's like, all right, you've got the physical ability to survive and to hang and compete. We're going to talk about how that translates to 2026 and beyond when we get back with Locked On Gators. Workplace chaos can show up fast, and that's where Indeed Sponsored Jobs comes in. Indeed Sponsored Jobs helps you reach candidates who actually fit what you're looking for based on skills, experience, and location. Finding the right person can make all the difference, whether it's building a business or building a winning team, which, in the transfer portal, you're trying to find that guy that just puts you right over the edge, right? In business, you're trying to find that person that puts you right over the edge. Spend less time searching and more time actually interviewing candidates who check all of your boxes. That's less stress, less time, more results. When you need the right person to cut through the chaos, this is a job for Indeed Sponsored Jobs. And listeners of this show will get a $75 sponsored job credit to help get your job the premium status it deserves at Indeed.com/podcast. Just go to Indeed.com/podcast right now and support our show by saying you heard about Indeed on this podcast. Indeed.com/podcast. Terms and conditions apply. If you need to hire, this is a job for Indeed Sponsored Jobs. And running a business should not feel like you're trying to connect a bunch of systems that were never designed to work together. It's annoying, right? One app for accounting, another for inventory, another for sales, and somehow none of them talk to each other. That's where Odoo comes in. Odoo is an all-in-one business management software that brings every part of your business together in one powerful platform. From sales and accounting to inventory and marketing, everything works in one place, helping your team move faster, stay organized, and focus on growing the business instead of just managing software, right? The best organizations know that success isn't just about talent. It's about having everyone working toward the same goal. That's true in sports and business. Great organizations win because operations matter. That's why you should get Odoo. Try for free today at odoo.com/lockedon. It's odoo.com/lockedon. Thanks again for making Locked On Gators your first listen of the day every day. We are available daily and free. We have us in the podcast and on YouTube. And Emeka Ugorji is competing for the starting offensive tackle spot for the Florida Gators. And I say offensive tackle because he is capable of playing both. We have seen him before. I mean, he's only played right tackle for Stanford. But again, also important to note the context of his stats looking terrible. You're at Stanford, right? Stanford is not exactly a powerhouse program. And I'm not saying good players can't come from Stanford, but I will say that typically good offensive lines don't come from Stanford anymore. Under David Shaw, great run blockers came, and the occasional, David DeCastro came out. But that has not been the case at Stanford for a while now. I don't know if it'll ever be the case at Stanford again, honestly. But pass pro is, honestly, all blocking is unit oriented. It's not just individuals. Individuals can screw things up and be the weak link, but at the same time, chemistry matters, right? We talk about that all the time here. Chemistry matters, and for Stanford, I don't think you really had that. For Florida, you hopefully will have that. That's one of the reasons that I think figuring out who's going to be your starting offensive tackles and who's going to be your starting quarterback is important. I think you got to figure that one out somewhat early. And I think Emeka Ugorji could very well be a starting candidate, and honestly would probably be one of my preferred options. I think if you have left tackle being either, again, and I say this knowing that There's no like clear, definitive, great option, right? If left tackle is either Emeka Ugorji or Fletcher Westphal, that would be my ideal situation just based on potential and what they can be with game reps, more game reps for Emeka. Fletcher just doesn't have game reps to begin with. But I will say that. Right tackle being Emeka Ugorji or Caden Jones. I think those are some spots that we should that we should talk about at right tackle. I think those are probably the most likely ones. And so I think looking at that, Emeka Ugorji is in this competition at both sides and is a preference of mine on either side. I want him out there. I think he's got the physical skill set to be good, right? Like I'm not going to say like, oh, definitively, yeah, he's going to be good. I don't do that, right? I will say he's got the skill set to be pretty damn good as an offensive tackle. I really trust Phil Trautwein as an offensive line coach. Like I think individually he's really good, but I think where he also needs more credit is being able to field competent units, because I do think that it's an important part of football that sometimes you're a great developer, sometimes you're a great recruiter, sometimes you get your guys to play well together, right? And I think that for Phil Trautwein, you've got all three of those right now, right? You've got all three of those checked for now. Like yeah, things can change. But all three of those things are valuable. And on the offensive line, you have them. Like, I want to see a guy like Emeka Ugorji. I want to see a guy like Fletcher Westphal, Caden Jones. Like, I want to see you work with a great offensive line coach. Emeka Ugorji has a very rare combination right now where he's got the physical skill set and the physical tools to be great. He doesn't have a lot of bad habits, at least on film, that I noticed. I do think towards the end of the year, by the way, I also wrote this in my scouting report. I do think towards the end of the year, he was dealing with some kind of elbow injury, maybe, because he wasn't wearing the elbow wrap at the beginning of the year. He was at the end, and he was particularly bad during the stretch with the elbow brace. And so I was like, I don't know if he was dealing with it or if that was just an accessory decision, but either way, I hated it. But he doesn't have like bad habits out there. He got beat for things, sure, but not necessarily bad habits that put himself in crappier situations. And so I think that you look at that, you look at the physical skill set, you look at not really a lot of bad habits that you're going to have to iron out. You look at someone that is still very young but experienced. Like, he's still incredibly young, right? But he's got 500 Power 4 snaps under his belt. That matters. That's important, right? Like, you've got that experience. You've been through the fire a little bit. And then now you're coming over and also just to be frank about it. Like, I don't think this coaching staff pounds the table for someone that they don't know like that to come to the Florida Gators if they didn't feel confident, right? Like, TJ Shanahan, Egan Boyer, Harrison Moore, Aaron Philo, Bailey Stockton, Patrick Durkin, Alec Clark, a bunch of these guys that came over from previous spots, Cam Dooley, like that came over with previous coaches or new coaches that were at those previous spots. Like, you could say, hey, like we know him as a person. We know that we're going to pound the table for him. Here, it's Emeka Ugorji is a guy that they have not coached before. And they were really high on him. And I feel like that has to be either an indicator that they know what they're doing or that they don't know what they're doing. And I think Emeka Ugorji, based on his film, for my opinion, I think it's an indicator of knowing what you're doing. And so I do want him to be a starter this year. I will say this, if he doesn't win the starting job this year, I would consider saying, hey, what if you redshirted? And then, because he did not redshirt, right? So I would consider saying, hey, what, like, would you be open to redshirting and then potentially being a 1, 2, or 3 year starter when you're done with your redshirt? I would just pitch it. I don't know if it would work. I don't think it would work, but I'd pitch it and see how it goes. But I think that should be an option if he doesn't win one of the battles, and say, hey, if you redshirt this year and just hop into it next year, like, probably a pretty good shot you're going to win that. Probably. Thanks for making Locked On Gators your first listen of the day. Every day we are available daily and free wherever you listen to podcasts and on YouTube for Locked On Gators. I'm Brandon Olsen. Don't forget to follow me on Twitter at WNS_Brandon. Also Instagram, TikTok, all that fun stuff. Locked On Gators for that. Find my written work about swampsignal.substack.com, and I'll see you all next time.